911, what is your emergency?
I'm at Taylor Park. I was out for my walk. Oh, God.
Sir, take a breath. Can you describe what you see?
It's a man in the lake, but he's missing his arm and a leg. Oh, God, there's so much blood in the water.
Okay, sir, we are dispatching officers to your location. Stay on the line. Do not approach the water.
There are places in the world that seem to exist in two different realities at once. By day, they are playgrounds, a place for families, for laughter, for the simple, joyful rituals of life. A park, with its manicured lawns, its winding paths, its placid lakes reflecting a perfect blue sky. You see children on swings, couples holding hands, disc golfers shouting with a friendly, competitive spirit. You see nothing but peace, nothing but ordinary. But then, the sun dips below the horizon. The last of the picnickers pack up their blankets, the teenagers on the benches finally head home, and a different reality takes hold. A reality older than any park bench, more primal than any paved path. A reality ruled not by people, but by instinct, by hunger. And sometimes those two worlds collide. A simple human desire to make a living, to find something lost, to do something that seems so small, so innocent, can lead you straight into the heart of a predator's territory. And in a place like Florida, where the line between civilization and the wild is just a few feet of shoreline, a quick dip in the wrong lake after dark can be the very last thing you ever do. This is the story of Sean McGuinness, a man who, in a desperate attempt to find something, found himself face to face with a silent ancient killer. And the world he entered was one he never came back from. Sean McGuinness wasn't a hero. He wasn't a villain. He was just a guy with a quiet life in Largo, Florida. A life that, like many, had its struggles. He was in his late 40s, a bit of a loner, but not in a sad way, more in a self-sufficient way. He found his rhythm in the small things, the simple things. And for Sean, one of those simple things was disc golf. Not playing it, mind you, but a different kind of involvement. It started as a hobby. He loved walking the courses, especially the one at John S. Taylor Park, a sprawling green space with a big shimmering lake at its center. He'd watch the players launch their discs, these colorful plastic frisbees high into the air. He'd see them arc, turn, and sometimes with a disappointing splash disappear into the murky water. What most people saw as a lost game piece, Sean saw as an opportunity, a small, legitimate hustle, a way to make a few bucks without hurting anyone. He started out with a long pole trying to fish them out from the edges, but that was slow going. He learned that the real bounty was out in the deeper parts of the lake, where the best discs, the rare ones, the custom ones, often sank. He knew players would pay good money to get their favorite discs back. Or if they didn't, he could sell them on his own. It was a perfect little business model, resourceful, smart, a way to get by. Sean became a familiar face to the regulars. They'd see him by the water's edge, sometimes with a mesh bag full of his finds. He'd smile, give a small wave. Nobody thought much of it. He was just that guy who gets the frisbees. They might have even admired his dedication, his drive. What they didn't know was that this little side gig was becoming something more. It was becoming a necessity. The small amounts he made added up. They helped pay the bills, put food on the table. It was his way, his livelihood. He knew the park like the back of his hand. He knew which spots were shallow, which were deep. He knew where the lily pads were thickest, and where the water had a gentle current that would carry the discs to a certain spot. He was a creature of habit, and his habits, slowly but surely, were leading him deeper into the lake's dark heart. The American alligator. A name that sounds almost too simple for the creature it describes. A relic of the dinosaur age, a living tank of a reptile with a smile that's all teeth and an attitude that is all instinct. The lake at John S. Taylor Park, like so many bodies of water in Florida, wasn't just a lake. It was their home, their territory. Alligators are ambush predators. They are masters of disguise, of patience. They can lie motionless for hours, their eyes and nostrils just peeking above the surface, looking like a piece of driftwood. They don't stalk their prey in a Hollywood movie kind of way. They wait and wait. And when the moment is right, when the prey is just close enough, they explode from the water with a force that can shatter bone. The alligators in this park were well known. People had seen them. The local news had even done a story or two about the resident gators. Park officials had put up signs, big bright yellow signs with a black silhouette of a gator. Warning, alligator habitat, stay out of the water. The signs were everywhere. A clear, undeniable warning. But for Sean, a man who spent his life around the lake, those signs probably started to feel less like a warning and more like a suggestion. He had seen the gators 100 times. He knew they were there, but they had never bothered him. They were just part of the scenery, like the birds or the squirrels. He had a job to do, and the money was waiting for him. The alligators, however, were not his friends. They weren't just part of the scenery. The largest one in the lake, a massive male, was estimated to be over 10 feet long. That's over 3 meters of muscle, scale, and raw power. An animal that size can weigh over 500 pounds. It could generate a bite force of over 2,000 pounds per square inch. This wasn't just an animal. This was a force of nature. And it was hungry. The danger wasn't new. People in the area knew the park had a gator problem, or, more accurately, that the gators considered the park their home. There were whisperings among the disc golf community, stories of a player's dog getting a little too close to the water's edge and a sudden splash. Another time, a golfer swore he saw a huge gator grab a goose right out of the air as it landed on the water. These were small, everyday reminders of the wildness that lurked beneath the calm surface. And for Sean, the stakes were getting higher. His methods grew more audacious. He wasn't just using a pole anymore. He started to use a small, inflatable raft, a tiny, flimsy piece of plastic that he'd paddle out in, armed with a net. This was a significant jump. He was no longer just wading in the shallows. He was putting himself on the water's level. He was an easy target, a meal waiting to be served. The warning signs were everywhere. Not just the physical ones, there were the verbal ones too. Park rangers had approached him before, telling him to be careful. They'd seen him out on the raft or wading waist-deep into the water. "Hey, man, you know there are gators in there, right?" one ranger reportedly said. Sean would just nod, maybe give a little laugh. "Yeah, I know, I'm careful." But was he? Or had familiarity bred a dangerous kind of contempt, a belief that he was different, that he was somehow exempt from the rules of nature? One evening, a woman walking her dog saw him. She described how he was out in the water, a headlamp strapped to his forehead, just bobbing along in the dark. The beam of his light cut through the mist rising off the lake, a lone human beacon in the darkness. She said it gave her a shiver, a deep, unsettling feeling. She thought it was crazy. She watched him for a minute or two, saw the flash of something dark and scaly glide past him in the shadows, and then quickly walked away. She didn't want to see what happened next. She just knew, instinctively, that this was a bad idea. The line between safe and unsafe was no longer visible. Sean had crossed it so many times he no longer knew it existed. The small-time scavenger, the resourceful entrepreneur, had become a predator's prey, and the stage was set for a final tragic act. The lake, which had given him so much, was about to take everything back. The day started like any other. May 31st, 2022. The Florida sun, already a hammer blow by mid-morning, promised another scorcher. For Sean McGuinness, the night before had been a success. He'd found a good haul, several rare discs. He was probably thinking about the money he'd make, the bills he could pay, the pressure he could ease. As the sun went down, the park emptied. The last of the disc golfers packed up, their friendly banter echoing across the now silent course. The sounds of human life were replaced by the sounds of the swamp, the chirping of crickets, the deep, resonant croaking of frogs, the rustle of leaves in the humid night air. This was Sean's time. Under the cover of darkness, he could work unbothered. He made his way to his usual entry point, a small sandy patch near the back of the course. He pulled on his waders, a pair of chest-high rubber pants that gave him a false sense of security. He had his net, his flashlight, his mesh bag. The water felt cool against his legs as he waded out. The moon was just a sliver, so the darkness was thick, impenetrable. He was a ghost in a black mirror. He shined his light on the surface, looking for the telltale gleam of a lost disc. The light beam cut through the inky water, illuminating the weeds, the murky bottom, the occasional fish. He was in his element. He moved slowly, methodically, a hunter of plastic discs in a world of flesh and bone. And that's when it happened. He must have been waist-deep, maybe a little deeper. He probably felt a sudden, massive shift in the water. Not a splash, but a displacement. The kind of movement you feel when something impossibly large and fast moves right next to you. Then, a crushing blow. The kind of impact that takes the air out of your lungs. The flashlight probably went spinning away, its beam a frantic dancing star across the water and into the trees. The initial bite was to his leg, a death grip. The gator's jaw clamped down with a force that shattered bone, severed muscle, and tore flesh. Sean's scream must have been swallowed by the night, a choked-off, terrified sound that nobody could hear. The world became a kaleidoscope of pain and terror. The gator's signature move, the death roll, twisting and spinning, tearing at its prey, disorienting it, drowning it. He fought. He had to have. The autopsy would later show defensive wounds. He must have clawed and punched and kicked, a desperate final struggle for his life. But he was outmatched, hopelessly outmatched. He was in the monster's element. His waders, once a shield, became a weight pulling him under. The water filled his lungs. The struggle went on, a brutal, silent battle in the dark. The gator's bite was relentless. It tore off his limbs, the ultimate tool for dismembering a large prey. The blood turned the water dark, a grim, swirling cloud of red. The final moments would have been a blur. The cold water, the crushing pressure, the tearing pain, the fading light. The last thing he knew would have been the murky, dark water, and the knowledge that his little, harmless hustle had just cost him everything. The call came in at 7:51 a.m. The sun was up, casting a golden light on the park, but the beauty of the morning was shattered by the discovery. Police officers were the first to arrive. The scene was unlike anything they had ever encountered. It wasn't just a drowning. It was something more. The sight of the body, mutilated beyond recognition, told a story that was ancient and terrifying. The Largo Police Department quickly cordoned off the area. A perimeter was set up. The lake, now a crime scene, was a silent, malevolent presence. The initial reports were confused. Was it a murder? A vicious crime? The missing limbs? The traumatic injuries? It was all too much. But then, as the detectives and medical examiner arrived, the awful truth began to sink in. The nature of the wounds, the location, the fact that a large part of the body was simply gone. It all pointed to one terrifying suspect. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC, was called in. Their gator trappers arrived, grim-faced and professional. This wasn't a rare occurrence for them, but a death, a human death. That was on a different level. They set up traps around the lake, using bait to lure in the animals. The community was in shock. Families who had played at the park just hours before were now glued to the local news, their faces pale with disbelief. Over the next few days, the FWC captured 2 alligators. One was a massive 10-foot-long male. The other, slightly smaller, was an 8-foot female. The public, the media, everyone wanted answers. They wanted a culprit. They wanted the monster. The alligators were euthanized, a grim necessity in these cases to prevent further attacks and to perform a necropsy to determine if they had been involved in the attack. The investigation continued. The medical examiner's report was definitive, yet chillingly vague. The cause of death was drowning, with blunt and sharp force injuries as a contributing factor. The wounds were consistent with an alligator attack. But the necropsies on the 2 captured alligators were inconclusive. There was no direct evidence, no human remains found in their stomachs, that definitively linked either animal to Sean's death. This was not a surprise to the experts. The body had been in the water for hours, maybe an entire night. The gator, or gators, could have simply left after the initial attack. The conclusion, however, was clear. Sean McGuinness was killed by an alligator. The news spread like wildfire. A man, a harmless man, killed while looking for frisbees in a public park. The story was everywhere. It was on the local news channels, then national news outlets. It became a cautionary tale, a grim reminder of the wild that still lurks just beyond the edges of our civilized world. People started to share their own gator stories. The comment sections on the news articles were filled with fear, with anger, with a strange kind of morbid fascination. There was a public outcry. Some called for the lake to be drained. Others demanded that all the gators in the park be removed. The FWC held firm, explaining that this was a natural habitat. They reinforced their warnings. They educated the public on living with wildlife. But for the people of Largo, the park would never be the same. The innocent, shimmering lake now held a dark secret, a memory of a terrifying night. The family of Sean McGuinness was left to grieve. His story wasn't a headline. It was their tragedy. The loss of a loved one, a life cut short in a manner that was both brutal and incomprehensible. His friends and acquaintances from the park were left with a haunting question. They had seen him, smiled at him, maybe even waved to him, and now he was gone. Had they seen the signs? Could they have stopped him? The sun still shines on John S. Taylor Park. The disc golfers still come. The laughter of children still echoes across the lawn. The no swimming signs are still there, maybe a little more faded, but no less serious. The lake is still. But if you stand on the shore at dusk as the light begins to fade and the human world retreats, you can feel it. A quiet stillness, an ancient presence. This isn't a story about a bad guy getting what he deserved. This isn't a story about a hero fighting a monster. This is a story about a line that we all draw in our minds between what is safe and what is wild. A line that Sean McGuinness, in a quiet, desperate attempt to make a living, crossed one too many times. He wasn't reckless. He was just human. He was just trying to get by. And that is perhaps the most chilling part of all. The quiet knowledge that we can build our parks, our homes, our lives, right on the edge of the wilderness. We can put up our signs, make our rules, and pretend we are in control. But in the end, nature doesn't care about our lines. It doesn't care about our jobs, our struggles, our good intentions. It is a force that exists on its own terms, a silent, patient force. And it's always waiting for the moment when you forget that you are on its turf, always waiting for a simple, fatal mistake.